Speaker, Dr. Sridhi Nathani, consultant molecular hematologist and oncologist, will be talking about genetic markers and their role in the preventing AV vascular access
So,
outcome.
so let me set stage for this one, because I thought of putting few different things in the conference to make it interesting. And also, we are not going to talk about money always. What if we have all the money in the world and everything available to us? What can be the future? And the only one thing why I actually asked her, can we do it? Because I was talking to one of my friend in Johns Hopkins, and I was telling him that we all are, we are bugged about this recurrent stenosis and intimal hyperplasia, and we don't know how to treat it. And he said, he listened to me and he said, oh man, can we make vaccine against it? I was like, what? Then when I went, there has been work going on to make a vaccine against intimal hyperplasia. So here is she about, the totally different view. Can we look into some genetics, please?
So a very good afternoon, and I think I'm a completely different piece from the entire jigsaw puzzle which is here, and it's a complete new audience, but thank you, Dr. Himanshu, for this opportunity. And I won't get too technical because I am definitely from the technical side of genomics and genetics, but I won't get too technical. I will give an overview of what can be done and why is it important, because I know it's not guidelines till now. And just a disclaimer, I'm usually called to conferences for the entertainment quotient, so just feel free to, laugh. So this is where I work, where we both work, Dr. Himanshu and I, and so the demands of the patients and clinicians, as Dr. Himanshu also said, think big, think completely out of the box, and for thinking and implementing, the deadline was always yesterday. So when I got this invite, my reactions was like, wow, aisa bhi kuch hota hai. I was like, this is completely out of syllabus because I come from Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai, when I joined Fortis, and it is completely oncology. I was like, wow, okay, then I need to study. So what you already know is that the AV access, the fistulas which you create, the plumbing which you do, the care of the created plumbing, the team which you have is a surgeon, an interventional radiologist, a nephrologist, nurse practitioners, vascular access care team. But so where do I fit in this jigsaw puzzle was my question. And when I started reading, I thought that the patient expects that the AV access has to be smooth, the maturation has to be smooth, the dialysis has to be smooth, everything has to be perfect. So, everybody who gives the patient an answer like this. They think, where were you? Where have you been? And probably the road is supposed to be very straight, but then the real world scenario is that the failure 3 months after creation is up to 40%. And the answer to this is very, very crooked. It's like Mumbai local trains. And so you have to do ishq with me. And I would say ishq nahi aasan, but, aag ka darya hai. So you have to talk to me. I am the genetics expert. That why did your AV fistula probably fail? So this was a very nice review article showing that what are the challenges and what are the causes why an AV fistula can fail. And all of us know inflammatory stimuli, oxidative stress, hypoxia, hemodynamic stressors, uremic milieu, and everything which can cause, all sorts of thrombosis and everything. But then, have we ever wondered that why do these occur and where is this all stemming from? It is coming from the genes, it is coming from the environmental and the microenvironmental milieu and the different RNA expression of the different types of inflammatory cells which are there. So let me get down to the inflammation bit. So we all know that CD4 cells are the main culprits over here, and we have T helper 1 cells, T helper 2 cells, and Treg cells, which cause the macrophages to accumulate by secreting cytokines like interferons and everything. But from where do these come? So M2 is supposed to be anti-inflammatory, and they secrete IL-10 and TGF-beta, which promote wound healing. But what if you had too much of TGF-beta? So TGF stands for transforming growth factor beta, which causes a lot of fibrosis, which is going to cause neointimal hyperplasia, and you don't want that too much to happen. So all this ultimately boils down to the AKT-mTOR pathway. That is the genes which is involved, and that is where I come into play. And if the AKT-mTOR pathway is altered, all this inflammation cascade is going to get altered and your fistula is going to fail. So what is the clinical implication? If you see, there is an mTOR inhibitor called rapamycin, which may promote venous modeling while reducing accumulation of both the M1 and M2 macrophages. So if you look at the left panel, if the M1, M2 macrophages are reduced, if the accumulation is reduced, the fibrosis is going to reduce. Intraoperative implantation of collagen membranes eluting the rapamycin have also shown to improve the maturation rate to 87%. And they have also shown in a clinical trial where they took 30 patients where they showed that it did not cause too much of systemic immunosuppression or any significant side effects, although it is still yet to come into clinical practice. And again, the ACCESS study also showed that there was a safety of collagen and implants eluting rapamycin, which was completed in 2021. So what I tried to do was that just to tell you the pathogenesis behind it and what is the clinical evidence right now available and why should you test it. So obviously you cannot go and test for M1 and M2 macrophages. What you can do is check for AKT-mTOR pathway. If that is altered, you may have a hint that the maturation is going to get delayed, and as well as it might lead to a primary failure. When we go to hypoxia, we have post-translational modification of hypoxia-inducible factor. We all know about it, that there is going to be hydroxylation, and when you do a local delivery of HIF inhibitors such as SIHIF1/2A or everolimus or topoisomerase, it will inhibit neointimal hyperplasia. So again, this slide, the left panel is what is induced and the right panel tells you the clinical implication of it. And if you take VEGF-A, a single nucleotide polymorphism, so what that means is that one particular ATGC in the genome changes to what it should not be, and it might be present in more than 1% of normal population. That is why it is called a polymorphism. Ideally, it should be benign, but then in patients who have to undergo an AV access, and if this polymorphism is present, it is going to increase the risk of thrombosis in patients undergoing hemodialysis. So there also probably an anti-VEGF-A like BEV can be locally delivered, and that is the trial which was done. The other one is the heme oxygenase 1A, which degrades free radicals. So something which degrades free radicals, something which removes something bad. Free radicals are supposed to be bad, so we want it to be upregulated. So how do you upregulate it? You deliver it locally using a viral vector or a bacteriophage vector. And mouse models, they have shown a lot of efficiency. But the next in technology is CRISPR, which is being used in hematology, in oncology. So maybe that can help in editing the genome and help in delivering such kind of enzymes locally into the AV fistulas. We also have two very important molecular pathways. One is the TGF-beta signaling pathway, which I told you causes a lot of fibrosis, proliferation, and survival. So who is the culprit here? So now we can't go and test for TGF-beta. We can go and test for the genes which induce TGF-beta one step ahead. That is the LMO7 and the microRNA 133. Now you're going to ask me, I know DNA, I know RNA, what is microRNA? MicroRNA is something which is not going to code for proteins, and we can test it. Now we are equipped, our lab is equipped to test for even the non-coding part of the genome, and we can tell you if microRNA is there or not, and that can help in regulating a lot of collagens and growth factors. So right now I'm sure your reaction is that why are you still talking, just get out of the podium. But then unfortunately you have to listen to me because I have been called to talk about genes. The other pathway is the ephrin pathway. You will be very surprised to know that ephrin is something which is very exciting. It is something like, when you make an AV fistula, and the maturation is a process where the vein adopts some of the molecular features of the artery. So when there was no fistula, the vein had A particular signature and the artery had a B particular signature. But when the fistula is created, it adopts some of the B features, and that can be tested genomically from the local site on the tissue or through a cell-free DNA from the blood. So whatever is circulating in the blood, we can check that as well, or you can give me a piece of some tissue from the local site and we can test for the ephrin expression there also. So ephrin B4 is exclusive for veins and B2 is exclusive for arteries. But when the maturation happens, it flips. So this is very, very important because they are going to trigger a lot of downstream pathways like AKT and ERK1. and cause a lot of neointimal hypoplasia, which will probably, be very clinically important for you because it may not lead to good maturation and it can lead to failures. So if you know the expression of Ephrin B2 and B4 before you create the fistula, you will probably know the risk of neointimal hypoplasia and then do something to prevent it. So what are the future perspectives and what can you get from me is that there is no documented association right now in routine clinical evaluation. There are no guidelines. There is nothing which mandates you to do any kind of testing. But what I can tell you is that any sample can be tested for all these inflammatory markers, all the hypoxia markers, all the genetic predispositions, all the collagenopathies, all the thrombotic diseases as well, and any material from the blood, starting from the cells to the DNA, to the RNA, to the chromosomes, even the cell-free circulating DNA, even the platelets for that matter, we can culture them and take DNA out of that and then do any kind of omics, we call it. So genomics means we do it on DNA, transcriptomics means we do it on RNA, proteomics means we do it on proteins, and metabolomics means we do it on the metabolites, that is the breakdown products of proteins. The technology, we have it all under one roof. Normally, all state-of-the-art labs have all of them under one roof. So right now, the status of all reports and all labs which offer such kind of reports in India is like a fruit and vegetable market. Everybody's just doing what they want, not only. So in the vascular space, I think it is totally new. Nobody's venturing into it. But I would say even in the space where there are guidelines, the status is still like this. There is no consensus right now for molecular reporting. And everybody says, I am the best, I am the best. But so I think when we do something first time, the first mover advantage is that definitely she's doing it for the first time. So definitely I will be the best in the vascular space. And my choice of test would be to do a whole exome or a transcriptome. Why? Because it will tell you all the polymorphisms, mutations, as well as the microRNA. Or you can do some targeted panel, choose a set of genes which you want me to test. I will create a panel for you, taking into consideration inflammatory markers, hypoxia, TGF, and Ephrin. Or you can do a bulk RNA sequencing, that is take the entire blood and take all the RNA out and do sequencing. Or you can do microarray and proteomics, but those are very high-end techniques and it's going to be a very, very costly affair. Typically, whole exome transcriptome combination would cost the patient close to 20,000 rupees with a turnaround time of 20 to 30 days. But I think that investment is good if you have to, be sure that something is going to work. So this is my choice. First is you have to test to know the utility. I think we don't have any India-specific data, and then only can we develop indigenous tests. So my urge would be that you should test to create our own data, probably multicentric, and then only we'll know that do we actually need it or whether are we genetically predisposed in a certain way, which the Western population is not. And because there is a lot of ethnic differences when it comes to genetic predisposition, what is pathogenic in the West is benign in India and vice versa. My take home is that it is an unmet need and success depends on the rule of right. So just like you have to choose the right patient, right vein, right time, and right technique, like that you have to also know that the patient is right genetically also. You have to test to know whether actually you need it or not, generate data, and very futuristic, just like in lung cancer and in hematology, we are using AI to predict if there is a genetic mutation or not. Probably there will be a time when we will be able to use AI and predict in this also that whether there will be a neointimal hyperplasia or not. So it has to be a possibilitarian approach rather than a guideline-based implementation approach. And finally, sooner or later you will definitely need me, just like Trump. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Srinidhi, for your talk. So our next topic is from Dr. Shabad Shamad on anastomotic stenosis of the RCF and interventional nephrology.